Lisa's phone vibrated once, then again, then 6 times in less than 30 seconds. She frowned and unlocked the screen, expecting work emails. Instead, a flood of banking alerts filled the display. Transfer completed. Transfer completed. Large transaction approved. What? She whispered. Her stomach tightened as she opened her banking app. The balance refreshed. Then refreshed again. Nearly every dollar she'd spent 6 years saving after her husband's death was gone. No, this can't be right. Her fingers shook as she called the only person who could explain it. Ryan. The call went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Blocked. A cold realization settled over her before she even checked his girlfriend Melissa's number. That one was disconnected too. Lisa stared at the empty balance, then at the family photo sitting beside her laptop. The money wasn't just savings. It was her mortgage payment, Ethan's school tuition, emergency medical expenses, every sacrifice she'd made since becoming a widow. And somewhere out there, her own brother had disappeared with it. Lisa grabbed her keys so quickly, she nearly left the front door open behind her. The 20-minute drive to Ryan's apartment felt endless. Every traffic light seemed designed to keep her from reaching him. She rehearsed excuses for him in her mind. Maybe his account had been hacked. Maybe someone had stolen his phone. Maybe there was some mistake. By the time she reached the building, those excuses disappeared. Ryan's apartment door stood wide open. Inside, the rooms were empty. Not messy. Not abandoned. Empty. The landlord was carrying a stack of cleaning supplies down the hallway when he noticed Lisa staring into the vacant apartment. You looking for Ryan? Yes, where is he? The landlord shrugged. Checked out this morning. Said he and his girlfriend were starting fresh somewhere else. Lisa felt the floor disappear beneath her. Did he leave a forwarding address? No, just handed over the keys, smiled, and drove off. She barely remembered walking back to her car. Instead, she began calling relatives. Surely someone knew where Ryan had gone. Her aunt answered first. Oh, Lisa, don't make such a big deal out of this. He emptied my savings account. I'm sure he'll pay you back. He took everything. He must have had a reason. Lisa ended the call before she said something she'd regret. The next call was worse. Her uncle sighed loudly. You know how your brother is. Exactly, Lisa replied. That's why I'm calling. So you're really thinking about reporting him? What choice do I have? You'd send your own brother to prison over money. Lisa stared through her windshield. Over money, she repeated quietly. That's the money keeping a roof over Ethan's head. Silence. Then another lecture about family loyalty. By evening, every conversation sounded the same. Ryan was struggling. Ryan deserved another chance. Ryan was still family. No one asked how Lisa was supposed to pay next month's mortgage. No one asked what would happen to Ethan. She drove home exhausted. The house felt painfully quiet as she spread bills across the kitchen table. Mortgage. Utilities. School expenses. Insurance. Her calculator displayed numbers that no longer meant anything because the account they depended on had been emptied. She covered her face with both hands. For the first time since losing her husband, she had absolutely no idea how she was going to protect her son. A chair scraped softly across the kitchen floor. 11-year-old Ethan had been standing in the doorway the entire time. He walked over without saying anything. He looked at the papers, then at his mother. Finally, in a voice so calm it barely sounded real, he said, Mom. Lisa looked up through tears. Don't worry. He placed one hand gently on her arm. I took care of it. Lisa blinked. The words didn't register. You, what? Ethan simply met her eyes. I took care of it. Lisa's heart skipped. What do you mean, you took care of it? Ryan's words echoed in Lisa's mind long after Ethan fell silent. I took care of it. She searched his face for any sign that he was joking. Ethan, she said carefully, do you understand what happened? He nodded once. Uncle Ryan took your money. Almost all of it. And you know we could lose the house if I can't fix this. I know. His calm answer only made her more uneasy. She knelt beside him and rested both hands on his shoulders. Sweetheart, tell me exactly what you mean. Ethan hesitated, then shook his head. Not yet. Lisa frowned. What do you mean, not yet? You just have to trust me. For a moment, she almost smiled. It sounded exactly like something she used to tell him whenever life became difficult. But this wasn't scraped knees or a bad report card. This was everything she had. She pulled him into a hug anyway. I wish it were that simple. That night, sleep refused to come. Instead, memories she had ignored for months kept forcing their way back. Ryan had offered to help shortly after Lisa returned to work following one of the hardest periods of her life. Between raising Ethan alone and keeping up with endless paperwork, she'd admitted she felt overwhelmed. I organize this stuff all the time, Ryan had said with an easy grin. You're making it harder than it has to be. At first, his help seemed harmless. He sorted mail, helped install banking updates, explained a few security settings she didn't understand. When she temporarily shared access during a medical emergency so he could pay a bill if she couldn't, she never imagined he'd keep that information. Now, every conversation replayed differently. Do you keep all your savings in one account? Those fraud alerts are annoying. You can turn some of them off. What's your password manager called again? At the time, they sounded like casual questions. Now they felt like preparation. The following morning, Lisa sat at the kitchen table collecting every email and bank notification she could find. Her finger hovered over the delete button on dozens of transaction alerts. Before she could press it, Ethan hurried into the room. Don't delete those. She looked up. They're just reminders of what happened. No, he replied. They're important. He walked closer, studying the screen. What time did the first alert come? Lisa blinked. Around 11:30, I think. Were they all from the same account? Yes. Did you save every message? Lisa stared at him. Those weren't the questions of a frightened 11-year-old. Those were the questions of someone looking for something specific. A chill ran through her. Why would Ethan care so much about banking alerts? Lisa barely had time to process Ethan's questions before her phone started ringing again. Her aunt's name flashed across the screen. She answered. Lisa, your cousin told me you're actually filing a fraud report. I am. A heavy sigh came through the speaker. Please think this through. Ryan made a terrible mistake, but involving the police will ruin his life. Lisa gripped the phone tighter. He emptied my savings account. He's your brother. And I'm Ethan's mother. Her aunt fell silent. Lisa ended the call before another argument could begin. The rest of the morning only got worse. A cousin posted online about how people should never betray family over money. Another relative sent Lisa a long message reminding her how much stress Ryan had been under. One uncle even wrote, sometimes forgiveness costs less than revenge. Lisa stared at the message in disbelief. Not one person asked how she was supposed to pay her mortgage. Not one person asked whether Ethan was all right. Instead, she found herself defending the simple decision to report a crime. She stopped responding. Instead, she drove straight to the bank. Inside a small meeting room, a fraud investigator spread printed transaction records across the table. Mrs. Carter, he said, thank you for bringing everything. Lisa handed him a folder. My son insisted I keep every notification and email. The investigator nodded as he compared the timestamps. A few moments passed in silence. Then his expression changed. That's interesting. Lisa leaned forward. What is? He pointed to several transactions. The first transfers were successful. She swallowed. I know. But these later ones weren't. She frowned. What do you mean? He tapped another page. Several larger withdrawals were interrupted before they finished processing. Lisa blinked. I don't understand. He looked back at the timeline. Something triggered enhanced fraud monitoring almost immediately after the suspicious activity began. Lisa shook her head. I didn't contact the bank until after I discovered everything. I believe you. The investigator folded his hands. Which raises another question. He looked directly at Lisa. If you didn't activate the fraud review. His eyes shifted toward Ethan, who had been quietly sitting beside his mother the entire meeting. Who did? Lisa slowly turned toward her son. Ethan lowered his eyes for a moment. The investigator offered him a reassuring smile. Ethan, he said gently, can you tell us exactly what you did? Ethan looked from the investigator to his mother. His feet barely reached the floor as he sat in the chair, but when he spoke, his voice was steady. I didn't know Uncle Ryan was stealing, he began. I just knew something wasn't right. Lisa reached for his hand. What did you see? Ethan took a slow breath. A few days ago, your phone kept making notification sounds while you were making dinner. Lisa frowned, trying to remember. I thought they were work emails. I looked at the screen because it kept lighting up. They were from the bank. The investigator leaned forward. What did the messages say? I don't remember every word, but they said someone had signed in from a different device. Lisa's eyes widened. I never saw those. You were busy, Ethan said quietly. I didn't want to bother you while you were cooking. He continued, glancing at the investigator. Mom always tells me not to ignore strange messages. The investigator nodded encouragingly. So what did you do? I wrote down the times. Lisa stared at him. You wrote them down. Ethan nodded. I thought if something bad happened later, you'd need to know when it started. The investigator scribbled a note. What else? I took pictures of the notifications before they disappeared. Lisa blinked in disbelief. You used my phone. Just for the pictures. He lowered his eyes. I was afraid if I told you right away, you'd think I was playing with your phone. The room remained silent. Then Ethan reached into his backpack and carefully pulled out a small spiral notebook. I keep this for soccer practice. He opened it to a page filled with neat handwriting. Dates. Times. Notification messages. Every suspicious alert had been recorded. The investigator examined it carefully. This matches our system almost exactly. Lisa covered her mouth. Ethan. I wasn't finished, he said softly. The next morning, I found one of your old bank cards in the kitchen drawer. Lisa remembered leaving it there after replacing an expired debit card. I turned it over because it had that number for reporting fraud. The investigator looked up immediately. You called it. Ethan nodded. I told them I thought something strange was happening. They asked questions I couldn't answer, so I just told them the times I'd written down and said my mom didn't know yet. The investigator smiled. That was exactly the right thing to do. Lisa stared at him. You never told me. I didn't want to scare you until I knew it mattered. The investigator closed the notebook. Your call didn't stop the first transfers. Lisa's shoulders fell. But it immediately increased fraud monitoring on the account. He pointed to the transaction records. Every attempt after that received additional scrutiny. He slid another page across the table. These larger transfers were frozen before they cleared. Lisa looked down. Nearly half the stolen money had never successfully left the banking system. The investigator continued. Because Ethan reported suspicious activity before the theft was complete, we also have an exact timeline connecting every login, every transfer attempt, and every device used. Lisa finally understood. Her son hadn't recovered the money. He had made it impossible for Ryan to disappear without leaving a trail. Before anyone spoke again, Lisa's phone vibrated violently across the table. Unknown number. The investigator nodded. You should answer. Lisa put the call on speaker. The moment she said hello, Ryan exploded. What did you do? His voice shook with rage. My cards are blocked, the transfers stopped, people are asking questions. Lisa didn't answer. Ryan kept yelling. You and your kid just destroyed everything. The line went dead. No one in the room moved. The investigator slowly reached for his phone. I think, he said calmly, we know exactly where to start looking. The investigator ended his call and turned back to Lisa. I can explain what happened now. He arranged the transaction records in chronological order. Ryan successfully moved the first series of transfers before our system detected a clear pattern. Lisa looked down at the pages. So, some of it's really gone. For the moment, yes. Her shoulders slumped. Then he slid another sheet across the table. But not all of it. He pointed to several transactions, highlighted in red. These transfers never settled. Lisa frowned. What does that mean? It means the money never became fully available to the receiving accounts. He looked at Ethan. When your son reported suspicious activity, our fraud team increased monitoring immediately. By the time Ryan tried moving the larger amounts, every additional transaction was being reviewed. The investigator smiled. Without realizing it, Ethan bought us time. Over the next several days, the investigation moved quickly. Using the screenshots Ethan had saved, the notes in his small spiral notebook, and the bank's electronic records, investigators established an exact timeline. Every login matched Ryan's devices. Every transfer request pointed back to him. Every attempt to move the remaining funds had been interrupted after Ethan's report. When Ryan insisted someone else had accessed the account, the evidence told a different story. The documented timestamps, device information, and transaction history fit together perfectly. His explanation collapsed. 3 days later, Lisa received another phone call. This time it wasn't Ryan. It was the investigator. We located him. She closed her eyes. Is he all right? He's in custody. Ryan had tried to withdraw money from an account that was already under investigation. The attempt immediately alerted authorities. When officers questioned him, Melissa learned that most of the money was frozen and that criminal charges were being prepared. She walked away before the interview was even over. The future Ryan thought he'd bought with Lisa's savings disappeared in a single afternoon. The bank completed its fraud review over the following weeks. Because Lisa had reported the theft promptly, and because Ethan's earlier call had triggered enhanced fraud protections, most of the stolen money was recovered and returned to her account. The remaining loss became part of the criminal restitution process. The mortgage was paid. Ethan's school expenses were covered. The emergency fund Lisa had spent years building was no longer gone forever. The hardest conversations came afterward. One by one, the relatives who had begged Lisa not to report Ryan began calling again. Only this time, their voices were different. Her aunt spoke first. I owe you an apology. Lisa listened quietly. We kept making excuses for him because it was easier than admitting what he'd become. Another relative admitted they had expected Lisa to solve Ryan's problems one more time, just as she always had. She didn't argue. She didn't remind them of everything she'd sacrificed. She simply accepted the apologies and made one decision she never would have made before. She stopped rescuing people who refused to take responsibility for themselves. That evening, Lisa and Ethan sat together on the back porch. The summer air was quiet. She wrapped an arm around her son. "I thought you meant you got the money back." Ethan smiled shyly. "I didn't. I know. I just remembered what you always tell me." She looked at him. "When something feels wrong, don't ignore it." Lisa laughed softly through tears. "I guess you were listening." "I always listen." She hugged him tightly. Not because he had saved her money, but because, when every adult around him panicked, he had stayed calm enough to do the right thing. Over the next month, Lisa changed every password, closed every shared access point, and added new security protections to every account she owned. More importantly, she stopped confusing loyalty with obligation. Ryan lost his freedom, his relationship, and the trust of everyone who had defended him. Lisa kept her home. She kept her future. And she gained something even more valuable, a quiet certainty that she and Ethan could face life's hardest moments together. As she filed away the last of the paperwork, she looked at her son across the kitchen table and smiled. Ryan had tried to steal her family's future. Instead, he revealed the strength that had been sitting beside her all along.